When Hulu announced that Daisy's parents in the Testaments would be different from the book, a lot of fans assumed it would be a small adaptation tweak, maybe a timeline adjustment, maybe a few rewritten scenes. But after episode 7, it's clear this was not a small change. It completely rewrites one of the biggest emotional twists in the entire Handmaid's Tale universe. Because in Margaret Atwood's novel, Daisy isn't just another refugee from Gilead. She's baby Nicole, June's daughter, the child whose escape became an international symbol against Gilead itself. And now, the show has officially destroyed that reveal. What makes this twist fascinating isn't just that Hulu changed Daisy's parents. It's why they changed them, and what that decision secretly reveals about the future of the series. Because the deeper you look, the more this feels less like a rewrite and more like a warning. The first clue was hidden in plain sight from the beginning. When we meet Daisy in Toronto, she seems disconnected from the larger mythology of The Handmaid's Tale. She's sarcastic, guarded, emotionally detached, and living what appears to be a relatively ordinary teenage life with Neil and Melanie. At first, longtime fans instantly tried connecting the dots. Teenage girl in Canada. Mysterious background, protected by underground operatives. It had to be Nicole. The show wanted audiences to think that. And honestly, for several episodes, it practically weaponized fan expectations. But episode 7 finally confirms the truth during that devastating conversation with Rita. Rita gently explains that Daisy's biological parents are dead. They escaped Gilead only long enough to get their daughter out safely. After that, Neil and Melanie raised her in secrecy while operating a Mayday smuggling network through their clothing shop. That revelation changes everything, not just because Daisy loses her parents twice over, but because the show intentionally closes the door on June being her mother. And the way Rita describes Daisy as a Moses figure is incredibly important. That line is doing more work than people realize. In The Handmaid's Tale, children are symbols. Gilead treats them as political property. But Moses imagery specifically reframes Daisy's story into something different from Nicole's. Moses wasn't raised by his biological family. He was hidden, protected, raised in another world, and eventually forced to confront the system he escaped from. That's Daisy now. The show isn't adapting Nicole's story anymore. It's creating an entirely new kind of protagonist. And honestly, that might make her even more dangerous to Gilead, because Daisy has something Nicole never truly had in the books: choice. Book Daisy's identity was destiny from the start. She mattered because she was June's daughter. Her bloodline carried narrative importance. Show Daisy is different. She chooses to go back. That's terrifying. After Neil and Melanie are murdered by Gilead operatives, Daisy could have disappeared. She could have run. Instead, she volunteers to become a Pearl Girl and infiltrate Gilead for Mayday. That decision completely redefines her character. She isn't fighting because she's the chosen child. She's fighting because Gilead took everything from her, twice. And that makes her feel emotionally closer to June than blood relation ever could. That's the hidden irony Bruce Miller seems to be building toward. Even though Daisy is no longer June's biological daughter, she's becoming spiritually connected to her anyway. You can actually see traces of June in Daisy's behavior already. The impulsiveness, the anger buried under sarcasm, the refusal to stay passive. Even her willingness to weaponize recklessness feels inherited from June's survival instincts. Bruce Miller basically admitted this in interviews when he explained why the timeline forced the change. In Atwood's novel, The Testaments takes place roughly 15 years after The Handmaid's Tale. That allows baby Nicole to grow into teenage Daisy naturally. But Hulu's adaptation jumps only about 4 years forward, meaning Nicole would still be a little kid. There was no realistic way to make the original twist work without aging up the timeline massively or recasting half the universe. So Miller made a radical choice. He separated Daisy from Nicole entirely. And weirdly, it may have saved the show. Because if Daisy had secretly been Nicole all along, viewers already familiar with the books would know exactly where the story was heading. Now, nobody knows. Even book readers are suddenly blind. That's powerful for a franchise like this. But it also creates a huge emotional problem. Agnes and Daisy are no longer sisters. And that changes the emotional core of the Testaments completely. In Atwood's novel, the relationship between Agnes and Daisy works because it's destiny disguised as coincidence. Two girls from opposite worlds slowly realizing they share the same mother is what gives the story its emotional gravity. Without that blood connection, Hulu has to rebuild their relationship from scratch, which may actually explain why the show is leaning so heavily into themes of chosen family. Think about it. Neil and Melanie weren't Daisy's real parents biologically, but emotionally, they absolutely were. Rita becomes a surrogate guardian too. Even Mayday itself functions like a fractured family structure made from survivors. The show keeps asking the same question over and over. What actually makes someone family? Blood? Sacrifice? Protection? Love? Gilead believes biology determines ownership. But the Testaments increasingly argues the opposite. And that's probably why changing Daisy's lineage matters so much thematically. The old twist was about secret heritage. The new twist is about identity. Who are you when your past has been erased? Who do you become after losing everyone? And maybe most importantly, can someone born outside Gilead still understand the horror deeply enough to destroy it? That's the experiment Daisy represents. But here's where things get even more interesting. The show still refuses to name Daisy's biological parents. That omission feels deliberate, because if they truly didn't matter, the writers would have revealed them already. Instead, they're leaving breadcrumbs. The fact that Daisy's parents successfully escaped Gilead suggests they were connected somehow. Ordinary people rarely survive long enough to pull off operations like that. Some fans think her parents may have been former eyes or low-level commanders who turned against the regime. Others think they could have been part of Mayday from the beginning. And there's another possibility almost nobody is discussing. What if Daisy's biological parents are intentionally anonymous because the show wants Daisy to represent everyone's lost child? Not June's daughter, not a chosen heir, just one of countless stolen children whose lives were shattered by Gilead. That would actually fit the political themes of the franchise far better than another secret bloodline reveal. And honestly, it may explain why the show's version feels more tragic. Book Daisy discovers she belongs to an important family. Show Daisy discovers she belongs to nobody, at least not anymore. That loneliness changes her entire trajectory. It's why her decision to walk willingly back into Gilead feels almost suicidal by the end of episode 7. She's not chasing destiny, she's chasing meaning. And that may be exactly what makes her the perfect weapon against Gilead, because the regime understands rebellion driven by politics. It understands rebellion driven by ideology. But rebellion driven by grief? That's unpredictable. That's explosive. And that's where Hulu may have secretly improved on Atwood's original twist, because now Daisy isn't important because of who gave birth to her. She's important because of who she chooses to become, which means the real mystery of the Testaments is no longer who are Daisy's parents. It's whether losing them will turn her into the person who finally burns Gilead down.